This is Tech News Tonight, episode 432 for Friday, September 25th, 2015. This episode of Tech News Tonight is brought to you by Braintree. If you're working on a mobile app and searching for a simple payment solution, check out Braintree. With one simple integration, you can offer your customers every way to pay. To learn more and for your first $50,000 in transactions fee-free, go to braintreepayments.com/technight. Welcome, I am Megan Morrone. Let's get to the tech news. The new iPhone 6s and 6s Plus are available in stores starting today. As we reported yesterday, despite Apple's new reservation system, there were still lines out the door, including several lines across the globe that included robots. So all y'all who were making your living waiting in Apple lines on the behest of lazy people, rest assured that the robots are taking your jobs too. Reuters reports that the new pink, aka rose gold iPhone 6s accounted for nearly 1/3 of early in-store sales. Analysts predict that Apple will sell 12 million to 13 million new phones over the weekend. People who are familiar with the matter are at it again. Today, they're claiming that Android is the newest Google service in the crosshairs of the Federal Trade Commission. Anonymous sources told Bloomberg News that the FTC is about to launch an investigation into whether Google unfairly used Android mobile market dominance to prioritize services like Google Search and Google Maps over similar services of competitors. And while you were busy waiting in line to upgrade that old iPhone you bought 6 months ago, you might want to know that North America is officially out of IPv4 addresses. For real this time, says Ars Technica. Yesterday, the American Registry for Internet Numbers, or ARIN, handed out the final free pool 32-bit IP addresses designed to identify and locate every computer, phone, or other device on the Internet. North America started with 4.3 billion possible IPv4 addresses to be handed out to web hosting companies, cloud providers, organizations, and individuals. It turns out that that is not nearly enough. So for now, you can trade for an IPv4 address or use IPv6, 99.967% of which are still available. Coming up, a Windows app for your new iPhone, and creepy robot babies make us smile. But first, this episode is brought to you by Braintree, code for easy online payments. If you're a mobile app developer, check out Braintree. They have excellent customer service and simple integration. They will get you ready to receive payments quickly. Braintree gives you a full-stack payment solution, support for all payment types your customers might want, so start accepting PayPal, Apple Pay, Bitcoin, Venmo, cards, and more, all with a single integration across all platforms with superior fraud protection, customer service, and fast payouts. To learn more and for your first $50,000 in transactions fee-free, go to braintreepayments.com/technight. This year, we have seen an all-new Microsoft. The company's been teasing us with holograms, open-source software, and a whole host of apps that are released on iOS before they're released anywhere else. Joining us to help explain what might be going on is Matt Weinberger, writer at Business Insider. Welcome, Matt.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So yesterday, you wrote about another app that Microsoft released for iOS called Invite. Can you tell us what it does?
It's one of those things where you can't believe no one's thought of it before. It just helps you find a time to meet up with other people. And it's meant for the workplace, but I can kind of see it getting extended to be like getting drinks after work, yada, yada. You set up a meeting and you suggest a few times and people come back to you. They suggest a few times and you can go back and forth until you find a time when everyone is free. So simple, but so much potential.
So it's different than just looking at someone's calendar and Outlook that you've, had forever, and it's somehow more seamless than that?
Well, it's more like when you're working at a company, you have access to everyone's calendars. That's great. But what if you're trying to set up a meeting with a contractor or someone who works outside of the office or someone whose calendar you don't have access to for whatever reason? That's where this can really shine, and that's where it can solve a real problem.
Yeah, they released an app that's similar. I think that called Toss Up that was out like about a couple months ago. I downloaded it. I keep seeing it. I've never used it. I guess that's the same thing, but just for, book club or, meeting people for drinks, like you said, or something like that.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not exactly a new idea, but I think the killer app here is that it integrates with Office, especially Office 365, which is kind of using it as a push towards.
Right. So they say that it works with any email client,
right,
but it works better with Office 365.
Yes.
So is that kind of their strategy to lure people into buying an Office subscription?
Totally, because look at it this way. not that Windows isn't still on, I don't know off the top of my head, but a lot of computers. But Android right now is currently the most popular operating system in the world, and iPhone is pretty up there. And, more phones are shipping than computers at this point, or getting there. Windows isn't as important as it used to be. People are doing more computing outside of Windows. So if you don't have Windows, what do you have? You have Office, right? So if you subscribe to Office 365, they're getting cash out of you, whether or not you're using Windows. And that's the big shift at Microsoft.
Right. So the other thing there that I just discovered recently, although I guess they have released this a while ago, that anyone who is hoping to use all these Microsoft apps for free on the new iPad Pro that Apple just announced, that's going to, revolutionize work and be able to use a tablet. So a lot of those apps that are free, that you won't be able to really use them on the iPad Pro. Is that correct?
Not without paying, and it's for that exact same reason. Even then, if you've ever used Word or Excel on your iPhone, it's kind of limited in terms of features. I don't want to say the wrong thing about what you can and can't do, but it doesn't have the same features as Word, Excel, PowerPoint on the desktop, right? So they want you to pay for that subscription. And the iPad Pro won't let you use it at all because the screen size is big enough to be considered a laptop. And that's how Microsoft determines who pays and who doesn't.
Yeah, because I use like Google Sheets and I'll use Google Docs and with my iPad. And yeah, it's not ideal. It's not as easy as the laptop, but it works pretty well. And I was hoping that would work better in the iPad Pro, but it might work better, but it won't be free like the Google.
That's exactly right. They want you to pay for an individual user. It's $6.99 a month, which isn't so bad. And then you pay your $6.99 and you get access to all the Office apps on, I want to say, 5 devices, which is a pretty good deal depending on what you're looking for. But they want to reel you in, especially on the iPhone, with those free versions. You know what I mean?
Yeah. First one's free, right?
Exactly right. Exactly right.
So I know you're a big fan of Cortana, and back in May, Microsoft said they would release Cortana on iOS at some point. Have you heard any more about that?
They released a beta of Cortana for Android just a couple weeks ago. Cortana is very cool, but because the iPhone isn't, they want to get it right. It already has Siri. So they're kind of dragging their heels on a little bit in the name of making it work properly.
And presumably they want it to work better than Siri, right?
Yeah, and the big challenge on the iPhone especially, I imagine, is that Apple is very protective of its default apps, right? I really doubt there's going to be an option to replace Siri with Cortana. That just seems impossible. So I can kind of see why it would be a lower priority for Microsoft in that regard too.
Right, because you can use like the Google Chrome app on iOS and use voice search, but they don't make it easy. You have to,
That's exactly right. So in that sense, there's just not. Meanwhile, with Android, you can do whatever you want to it. So they can replace Google now with Cortana deeply integrated into the operating system. So it makes sense that that's where they focus their energies first.
So you saw a demo of another Microsoft product, Gig Jam,
yes,
which sounds suspiciously like HipChat or Slack. It's like that same kind of naming. Maybe they were all named by the same company.
Yeah.
How does that work?
It's really funky. I think it's kind of cool. I got to see a demo of it at a Microsoft event this week. The way it works is it's easier to show than to tell, but you use either voice chat or typing to pull up the information you want. So you can say something along the lines of, pull up all my emails from today, pull up all my sales leads from the last week. That gets pulled up. You can put 2 or 3 things next to each other or all in the same go. And then what you do is you circle the stuff you wanna share and shunt it over to whoever you want to share it with. Then once you've circled it, you choose what you want to share by actually crossing out the stuff that you don't want other people to see. Then you send it off to other people, and other people can send information back with the same system of circles and X's. It looks like, just hearing about it, it sounds weird, but when you see it, it's actually surprisingly intuitive, and it could work. It looks like this nice middle ground between like video conferencing and email.
So yeah, I mean, anyone who isn't really familiar with using these kind of programs in their daily, using Salesforce, like anyone who's not in the enterprise, it's like, well, what is that for? Whereas like something like Slack is like, well, everybody uses email no matter what your job is. So it makes more sense.
Yeah, and exactly. And they say that Microsoft likes to call Gig Jam a whole new way of communication. They call it, I think, the molecules of work, each bit of data you pull up. And there's a lot of really cool stuff going on behind the scenes to make it possible. But again, it's a little tricky to describe because it is so different than anything we're used to. But it's supposed to replace the 15-minute phone call. It's supposed to replace the 5-minute, the 5-minute, hey, what was that order number again kind of call. And in the example I got, they also showed off how it could be used for like booking a hotel if you're going on a flight, because you can pull up flight itineraries right next to hotel options, next to Google Maps or Bing Maps probably, and have all that data in front of you and share it back and forth in a way that's a little easier than an email where you'd have to take screenshots or do a lot of copying and pasting, and somewhere between screen sharing where they can just see everything that's on your screen, and maybe you don't want them to see how much you paid for the hotel or for the flight, and so you can just X that out and they don't get to see that. Huh. Yeah. It's weird.
So speaking of these kind of communication apps, sure. Today you also wrote about Atlassian, the company behind the business communications app HipChat. The Australian company submitted a confidential filing today for an initial public offering. They're valued at $3 billion privately. Now they own HipChat. They also own Jira, which is a system for creating and tracking help tickets. What's interesting about this company?
There's a whole lot that's interesting about them. They're based in Australia. They don't employ salespeople, which is kind of weird, given Silicon Valley's sales-driven focus right now. But the idea is that you sign up for their services, including Jira and HipChat, through their website via referrals or word of mouth. Meaning that they don't actually have anyone whose job it is to go out to customers and get new customers, which means that they got to a $3 billion valuation in a very non-traditional way.
Yeah.
Moreover, they didn't actually take venture funding. They started in 2002, not long after the dot-com bubble burst, and they didn't go after funding in any of the traditional ways. They've been profitable for some time without taking any venture money.
So they started in 2002. That's like ancient history in Silicon Valley at this point. And so have Jira and HipChat been, I mean, HipChat hasn't been around that long. Has Jira been around that long, or were they just developing these for a long time?
They've been, I don't want to tell you the wrong things. I don't know off the top of my head when Jira started, but it's been around for some while. I believe it's been around since at least the early mid-2000s. And it's kind of, standard's a strong word, but it's one of the most used bug tracking systems out there. It's gone through a lot of refinements over the years. It's kind of changed with the industry, I guess, and HipChat as well. But HipChat is under a lot more pressure than it may have ever been before because Slack is just eating their lunch left and right.
Well, yeah, I used Jira on a freelance project once, and it's funny because I never knew that other people knew what it was, but there was a diversity in tech. I think maybe you heard about this, but they were talking to women in tech and what's it like. And Jessica Alba, who's of course the actress, but also a CEO of Honest Company, and the moderator Gail Smith, Gail asked her.
Oprah's Gail.
Yeah, Oprah's Gail said, asked her something, and she said, "Well, I don't know how to code, but I do know how to, to write a Jira ticket." And then, Oprah's gal said, like, "You're not even speaking English right now." So I thought it was funny because it is one of those words, I guess, that people throw around that aren't coders, but like that, are in the trenches of work.
Very much so. Yeah. Very much so. It's like, it's just so crazy popular. So much stuff is made possible by Jira behind the scenes and people don't even realize it, which is what makes Atlassian such a major player. It was kind of a right place, right time kind of thing. It provides tools to build and manage software, and has offered this since before the current rush in Silicon Valley. So it's been thinking about this stuff for longer than most of the other people.
And so HipChat, how would you compare HipChat to Slack?
I mean, in a lot of ways, they do the same thing, and that's been one of the biggest criticisms of Slack. It's that it didn't invent or even reinvent the wheel. But HipChat, and I'm basing this on my own use of HipChat at a company I worked for 2 years ago. So for all I know, it's a million times better now. But the last time I used it, it was slow and ugly, and the mobile app wasn't great, and it was hard. It was a pain to get it to integrate with any other services, and just vaguely unpleasant, you know? Slack, on the other hand, has succeeded and taken off the way it has because it's just so much more fun to use, I guess. It's prettier, it's easier to work with, it's bright, it's colorful, it's cheery. It integrates with everything else. It has, out of the box, if you type /Giphy, it'll play GIFs for you. It's just a delight comparatively.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining us. Matt Weinberger is from Business Insider. He is at Gamoid on Twitter. And he posted today on Business Insider an excellent photo series on Facebook that goes all the way back in time and tells you how much Mark Zuckerberg and the early founders of Facebook enjoyed beer.
That's right.
So definitely check that out on Business Insider today. Thank you so much, Matt.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye. You too. Bye.
A new study today published in the journal PLOS ONE explains a little bit about why babies smile, and scientists used one of the creepiest looking robot babies to prove it. But let's be honest, the moment a robot baby stops looking creepy to us is the moment that we've officially handed over power to the robots. Here's the research. Infants time their smiles in order to make their mothers smile. In other words, babies smile for a social goal. Paul Rivolo at the Olin College of Engineering in Needham, Massachusetts, and his team designed the robot baby to perceive and produce smiles while interacting with adults. They found that babies 4 months of age and younger intentionally smile in order to maximize their mother's smile, whereas mothers smile to produce as much simultaneous smile time as possible. If that makes no sense, you can read the full findings and see photos of the creepy robot baby at PLOS ONE. And that is it for this edition of Tech News Tonight. You can get links to the show at our Tech News Tonight Facebook page. You can also comment, and you can comment on Twitter, thanks to Ed Riley, who enjoyed the conversation I had last night with Lauren Hawkinson from The Next Web about the subtleties of the women in tech issue. You can also subscribe to the show at twit.tv/TN2. You can write to us at tn2@twit.tv and watch live every weekday at 4 p.m. Pacific. And thanks to Mark NP for tweeting that you can also watch us on the Watch Up channel on the Wii U. He liked our segment yesterday on the iPhone lines, and he liked our robot. Don't miss our morning news program, Tech News Today, every weekday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm Megan Morrone. Thanks for watching.
Bandwidth for Tech News Tonight is brought to you by CashFly.com.